This is TradeFlow News, bringing you relevant news and insights from around the world. TradeFlow News, enabling trade for SMEs and economies worldwide.
These are some of the key topics that we will be looking into in today's program.
First, let's take a look at the overnight headlines which are impacting the commodity markets.
Japanese officials are working on ways to get around restrictions on releasing national reserves of crude oil in tandem with other major economies to dampen prices, four government sources with knowledge of the plans told Reuters. While Prime Minister Fumio Kishida signaled his readiness over the weekend following a request from Washington, the world's fourth biggest oil buyer is restricted on how it can act with its reserves, made up of both private and public stocks, which typically can only be used in times of shortage. One of the sources said the government was looking into releasing from the portion of the state-held stocks outside the minimum amount required as a legal workaround.
Saudi Arabia held its position as the biggest supplier of crude oil to China for an 11th month in a row in October, with volumes up 19.5% from a year ago, customs data showed on Sunday. Saudi oil arrivals totaled 7.1 million tons, or 1.67 million barrels per day, BPD, data from the General Administration of Customs showed, which is 19.5% higher than 1.4 million barrels of oil per day a year and compares with 1.94 million barrels of oil per day in September. Inflows from Russia, including pipeline oil, inched up by 1.3% from a year ago to 6.6 million tons last month, or 1.56 million barrels of oil per day. That compared with 1.49 million barrels of oil per day in September.
Moving on to the top news in the energy sector.
Oil prices rose on Monday but remained under pressure from rising COVID-19 cases in Europe and a potential release of Japanese and Indian oil reserves, raising concerns about both oversupply and weak demand. Prices of the Brent and U.S. West Texas Intermediate (WTI) crude benchmarks fell more than $1 in early trading, hitting their lowest levels since October 1. By 14:44 GMT, Brent was up 34 cents, or 0.4%, at $79.23 a barrel, while U.S. crude had gained 29 cents, or 0.4%, to $76.23.
President Joe Biden launched an aggressive attack on gasoline prices last week, enlisting China and other nations in a possible joint release of oil reserves, and sharpening a probe into oil giants' pricing. The efforts may have limited impact on prices at the pump, experts say, but doing nothing would be a political mistake as gasoline prices hit a 7-year high. The average U.S. retail gasoline price is $3.41 a gallon, up from $2.11 a year ago, according to the American Automobile Association. Americans are by far the world's heaviest consumers of gasoline, thanks to big cars, long driving distances and little public transportation in many areas. Next, we have the top news in metal markets. China's magnesium exports in October rose almost 44% from September to their highest level in 19 months, customs data showed, soothing fears of tight supply of the metal as production recovers. China supplies around 85% of the world's magnesium, a key element in aluminium alloys used to make auto parts. Its production, which is heavily concentrated in the northwestern province of Shaanxi, fell sharply in September amid curbs on power use by energy-intensive industries. That sent prices to record highs and led to warnings of looming shortages in Europe.
Global primary aluminium output rose to 5.689 million tons in October, up 1.2% year-on-year, data from the International Aluminium Institute, IAI, showed on Monday. Estimated Chinese production was 3.270 million tons in October, up from 3,250 million tons in the same month last year, the IAI said.
We will now look at the top news in the agricultural sector.
Russian wheat prices gained for the fifth consecutive week last week amid strong demand from importers, analysts said on Monday. Russia sold about 250,000 tons of wheat to Algeria last week. This market is traditionally dominated by France, and Russia, the world's largest wheat exporter, has been lobbying for access to it for years. The shipment is due in December. Russian wheat with 12.5% protein loading from Black Sea ports for supply in the first half of December was $334 a ton free on board, FOB, at the end of last week, up $6 from the previous week, the IKAR consultancy said.
That is all for today's news on commodity markets. Stay tuned to TradeFlow News as we continue to provide you with more updates. We also invite you to follow us on Twitter at TradeFlow News, which allows you to watch our program on your mobile device or desktop to receive information from there.